All right, good. Listen, hey, it's been a while since we've had the Boss Juice podcast moving, and we are back on track. And 2025 is going to be a great year. We got a lot of guests lining up, and I was really excited to sit down with actually clients, personal friends, and guys that have an interesting story. And this is just a piece of the group here, but the Allora Wine Group. Also tied to Il Bar Italiano. That's another piece that we work with. But I'm sitting here with obviously Antonino, my cohort here, and we've got the rest of the crew. We got Jaden, we got Dylan behind the cameras, and we got Michael Minson and Brian Cubelis, and we're going to talk a little bit about wine and liqueurs and how they got into this super interesting business. There's some travel involved, and I just want to hear the story. But before we get into too much of that story, I want Michael to talk about this beautiful table that we're sitting at right now. Michael, can you lead us off here with this thing?
Sure. I mean, first and foremost, thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Great to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's I guess anyone that's interested in hearing our story, we're thrilled about. So yeah, thanks for having us today. But regarding this, this is my Nona's table. So it's kind of taking a second life here in our warehouse. Truth be told, it got kicked out of my personal house and made its way here. Not necessarily because my wife didn't like it, but because we didn't have room for it. Right. But yeah, it's it's kind of a Art Deco table. I think dates back to the 50s, but it was my first encounter with it was in my grandmother's kitchen, where it was kind of the focal point of any Italian American home. So this was the kids' table. So even when we became adults, we still shared our stories, out on this table. But this was also the table that my grandmother would have. She had a cutting board that was almost the size of it, and would roll the polenta out and cut it with strings. If it was a special Sunday supper, and she was making veal stew. So, but it was there. It was kind of a gathering place for stories then, and where we continue that story now. So that's awesome.
I think it's beautiful, and you look at the patina in this table. You can tell that this wasn't something that just sat there with a cover on it. This is something that, if this table could talk, right? The different things. It's weird, Michael. Sure. We talked for a second before we sat down here behind the camera or in front of the cameras. Talked about it's an inanimate object that there's a lot that goes into this beautiful table here, and I wonder too, is this table in a weird way sort of a precursor to how our butts are all sitting in these chairs right now, how you got into this business, the culture and family and things like that. Let's hear a little bit of the story.
Yeah, I mean definitely. I think my story is not much different than Cube's. If those of you who don't know Cube's, Brian Cubelis is actually Cube's from this point forward. But yeah, it was a very traditional in the sense Italian American family. It has a patina, but it's meticulous because my grandmother and grandfather were meticulous about their home. They were meticulous about their pursuit of the American dream. But they really cared for everything that they had. So, but yeah, Sundays were sacred, and there was always a lot of food on the table. My grandmother was never shy with. She was a stickler for whatever was on your plate, you eat it. But but there was always a bounty of food, and there was a lot of conversation, and wine was associated with that. So it's kind of. It was a nice upbringing for sure.
That is interesting because I too come from a very, very Italian family, and Sunday dinners are a tradition every week.
Agreed.
So I'm curious though, for both of you, how has Italian culture, your Italian upbringing, influenced business? Because I feel like there's a lot of correlation between Italian culture, hard work, and business.
Hard work, I agree for sure. You learned how to work hard. You learned to be responsible, and it carries you a long way in business, no matter what industry you're in.
Yeah, I think the passion or the innate love for culture, Italian culture. I mean, what's not the love? I mean, let's be honest. And particularly, a good food, good wine. There's a certain aesthetic and appreciation that's different than a lot of other cultures.
For sure. So I'm curious too how you take this. You have a love for your Italian culture, a love for your Italian family, and you sort of get to do this business now, where you get to blend those two things together. Has that ever changed your outlook on the Italian culture? Because I know a lot of people say keep work and business separate, and for me, my separate from work is my family life, and this atmosphere and this reminds me of my grandparents' basement. This reminds me of my Sunday dinners every Sunday. Do you ever feel like kind of blending those two together has caused issues, or have you left you with a bad distaste?
I don't think so. No. I think it's great. Mike and I have both gotten to travel numerous times with our families, with with friends. So I think it's been a great tie to incorporate all of that into business. There are long days, long hours, but I think it's been a great way to, experience with families and friends and things like that. So I don't think there's any negative or downside to it.
No, I think it's just to piggyback on what Hughes is saying. I think it's it's supplementary. If anything, I think our families are growing in the sense of I'm the only one with a child. That's Marco right there. But in the sense that we have long-standing relationships with our producers, so they come here, we go there. So it's almost extended family. Which I think is a different approach than a lot of other importers, distributors. They're always looking for the next trend, or they're looking for the next wine, to keep things fresh. Where I think we take a little different approach of long-standing relationships and continued building of particular brands and just our personal relationships. So, I definitely it's I think for us it's not a hindrance. It's a major positive
for sure. I mean, we stay in close contact, like Mike was saying, with all of our winemakers. On a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. It's not just when you need to order wine or when there's a discussion to have. We know what's going on in their lives. They host our families when we go there, so it is a very close relationship.
One of the questions I have around that though is if someone was trying to start a business like this, how do you build a relationship with those winemakers? Because a lot of them are not U.S. based; they're in
Correct.
Europe, in Italy.
They're all based in Italy. We have a few that we're really close with, and they've done a lot to help facilitate for us. Great introductions, great groups of people. So normally when you have a good person you work with, their friends and their colleagues are normally good people as well. So it's a way to start building that network, try to spider it out to different regions, different things like that.
So we talked about family and the table and the stories and eating and, enjoying wine and things like that. When did this passion become something that you guys decided, hey, we could turn this into a business? How did this all evolve? When did you start heading, across the water and meeting people? How did this all come together?
Well, a friend of ours and his father started the license, and we started to work along with them when our friend Guy Peluso moved out of state, helping his father Bob out on the day-to-day basis. And then slowly, as we started to build the business, is when Guy decided that he was not moving back. So we decided at that point to look into the possibilities, and Guy was open to the possibility of a transfer and a sale, which put us into the business. and then it was from there it was changing the business in the sense of how they ran it to how we run it now. And we do all of our connections, and all of our winemakers are all people that we have met since then, which is how many years now?
9.5 years in the making. So
Cool.
yeah, we're almost a decade strong, pandemic proof, and we're still kicking and keeping the lights on.
It's been slow, but now it's turned into a real business.
So, talking about kind of like you said, your friend's father had the license. So I've heard that Pennsylvania is a pain when it comes to liquor licenses, liquor sales. Do you guys have to deal with any of those hurdles?
Yes, Pennsylvania is a monopoly state as far as its control of liquor, but there's also the federal and other levels that Michael does most of that dealing with. So, but there's plenty of hurdles.
Yeah, but just like any system, there are hurdles, advantages and disadvantages to any system, and there's some pretty advantageous. There's a few things that are work to our benefit. For instance, when you're dealing with a state organization, you typically get paid. So granted, we have 60-day terms, but once that 60-day time period runs up, there's a check in the mail versus possibly having to hire someone that exclusively deals with accounts receivable and payable, and then maybe hiring Rocco as well to go shake these people down in order to get paid. So that's a really big selling point, is the avoidance of having to have another person on staff, but also just getting paid. And to your earlier question too, as far as like building some of these relationships out, I always say that paying your invoices goes a long way too.
Absolutely.
Certainly does.
That's been a real major part of our growth and development is just paying when we're supposed to pay.
Sure.
I'm sure that's the second question that comes out of their mouth. Oh, how is Dominic, Brian, and crew? They good to work with? Do they pay their invoices?
Yeah.
So it's like any good business. That's like 101. So but it goes a long way. Especially a lot of these people, we don't have. It might just be an email introduction. So you never even like sit across the table from these people. It's really based on your reputation. It's based on who you work with and how you handle yourself. So a lot of it's blind. A lot of it is kind of we're throwing ourselves out there, but so is the producer.
Right.
But it's so far it's kind of we've all landed on our feet, I guess.
I think it ties into the way I was describing the way we network, through good people. And when they refer us to another producer or somebody that they know, they can say, these guys are good people. Right. Even though they're 5,000 miles away, they're good. They'll be over to visit,
So you guys decide that you're passionate about something. All of a sudden, you start heading over there. You foster really great relationships with people, and through referrals and other intros, things like that, you start to build it. Then all of a sudden, I think one of the things that needs to happen is you've got to sell product now. What's your process? How do you identify who you want to go talk to? How you're going to lock them down? What you're going to offer them? How do you identify those people and get out there and actually make product available?
I'm sorry, Sean. Product from the producers or products for any potential clients here stateside?
Yeah, so you're gonna Pittsburgh based, but you also have clients in DC area and expanding into other, hoping to expand into other cities. You've got to know what you're selling, and then you got to identify who you're going to sell that to. How do you guys do that? How do you decide who you're going to go talk to? And
I think sales is tricky like that no matter what product you're trying to sell. You have to find the buyer and approach them. And to your point, you have to be knowledgeable. And we are lucky in the sense that we get to visit all of these winemakers, and the amount of knowledge that you gain in just a short period of time with them, when you're there to visit or when they come here, you're together almost 24 hours a day. So the conversation continues about their family history, the products, the procedures, and everything like that. So when you walk into a restaurant customer, you feel totally comfortable, discussing how they make the wine, what their family, is like, what is important to them.
Yeah.
And I think that helps sell as much as having you definitely have to have good wine as well.
Well, I think that's the difference. So any of us can walk into a wine and spirit store and talk to a clerk, and they're going to guide you maybe in a certain direction. Here, you're actually meeting the producers, the distilleries, the wineries. You know what the families look like. You know what they sound like. You know what the region looks like. Imagine the knowledge base that you're walking into a prospective client's restaurant or cocktail lounge, to talk to them. Imagine the additional information you have to share about all of these products. I think that's what really sets you off. Sets you apart.
No, it's true for sure.
I think it's one of the many things that we differentiate. We're always trying to find new ways, but I think that's a core, a mantra of what we do is the story, the education piece. I think it's a major differentiator for us.
Yeah. What challenges have you bumped into that people would find sort of interesting, or, man, I never thought of that? What kind of challenges within this industry that you see?
The pandemic was an unbelievable challenge in the state of Pennsylvania. Almost all of our customers were closed. So that was a very tricky time as we worked through, the closures, the reopenings, the reclosures, the shipping that went on at that time. I mean, I think that was a big thing for any business.
Yeah.
Those couple of years.
Did you guys ever have to really look in the mirror and say, "Hey, can we survive this?" Because it's not a hobby at this point. When you look around and you see pallet after pallet after pallet of product, you got a lot of inventory here that can't just. There's not really a shelf life. There is and there isn't, but it's got to move too. You got to eat.
Those were thoughts, for sure. I don't think we had doubts.
Yeah.
We didn't have doubts, but those were all thoughts you had to think about.
Yeah.
I don't know if I had time to think about it. My son was, at that point, I don't know, a year and a half. That was my thoughts, or literally, having milk on the table and doing whatever needed to be done to do it. So I didn't have doubt. That was I didn't even think about it, to be honest with you. I don't know. I'm pretty confident in what we do, especially at this point. I think so. There's certain vice. Alcohol consumption can be a vice. Of course. We encourage moderate consumption and responsible consumption, but obviously it's one of those things that now we see it's pandemic proof. And versus a lot of other things that aren't. So. But yeah, I'm not signing up to revisit that time, anytime soon or during my lifetime, or, I hope that never occurs in my son's lifetime or, in the future. But, there's, just to answer the challenges questions, there's always, I think of late, it's been just a lot of bureaucratic stuff, just changes in whether it's the state system or the federal system. That's, it's more just red tape driven, just a lot of busy work that, Dominic's been really spearheading a lot of that stuff. And it's challenging because it never stops. Like, it's like, okay, it's like we take care of one thing, whether it's to become a certified, so Allora Wine Group is now a organically certified importer. Which is we have to be now. So you wrap that up, and then there's something else going on where with whether like customs and duties, for instance, there are some opportunities as an importer that you can get some rebates on some of the customs and duties that you have, but you have to go through hoops in order to get that done. So it seems like we wrap up one thing and then there's something else that we have to tackle. Sure. So, we're hopeful maybe the back end of 2025 there won't be any more of that, and we have these systems in place. But the last few years, those have been some challenges, I think.
Speaking on the topic of challenges, so you get most of your product is imported outside of the United States into the United States. Are you concerned at all about the tariffs and this whole tariff talk?
Concerned, yeah, absolutely.
You have to have concern. Hopefully, cooler heads will prevail, and it won't be as much as the talk is now. Yeah. For sure. It's definitely a concern. I mean, I don't know if I'm necessarily concerned about 200% tariffs. I don't think that's going to occur. But yeah, I mean, it's a major concern. It's a major part of what we do in our model. So I think the bigger concern for me is I think something's going to happen. What that is, I don't know. I agree with Cubes. I hope cooler heads prevail and they come to a compromise and realize that this is a give and take thing. Sure. And we need to work together. But I think like once a precedent is set, like if there is a big tariff, then the baseline changes, and I don't think it's going back. So that's the thing that I'm most concerned about is, granted biases aside here because we only deal with Italy, but there's no better, even for the stature of the country, which isn't that big, there's no better country as far as the variety of wine, the quality of wine, that quality to price ratio is there's no better country that does it than Italy. And it's going to be majorly affected with heavy tariffs. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but that's my biggest concern, I think, is that scooting into this new category. Where is the bar set going forward?
That is interesting.
And what impact it has on the restaurants. Like that's which is our major clients. Like, because they're already working on really tight
effect too, because you're going to have to charge more to the restaurants as well.
Correct.
So they're going to have to charge more, and they're, it's already, I mean, we all experience it. It's
inflation.
It's expensive to go out to eat anymore. It's expensive to get takeout, so it's only going to get more. So at one point do people just, say, screw it, and we're not going to go out to eat? I don't know. So obviously it would have a trickle-down effect to us. So yeah, it's very volatile and interesting times right now.
Talk for a minute about some of the product lines that you carry, and be it liqueurs or wines or whichever ones you want to hit. I know you laid a couple bottles out on the table. Can we talk about these?
Sure. We'll start with the Sal Mariano here, the green bottle that you see. Lorenzo Moratti Campi is one of our closest friends and allies, I guess. A lot of people refer to Lorenzo as Il Principe, the Prince. He's just a great guy. He's made a lot of introductions for us. He's been here to visit multiple times to Pittsburgh, which, those visits really do help us when we can take the winemakers out to visit customers and add more credibility to us. So Lorenzo has been great, and his wines are fantastic. You want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. When asked to put a few bottles on the table here, I kind of referred to this group as like the trilogy. So they're all three of these people are very well connected, good people, good winemakers, but they've been unbelievable resources for us in order to build the portfolio and be connected to other good people. So, second being here is Le Fraghe, which is a winery in the north of Italy in the Veneto. Just using Venice for all of our listeners out there that aren't familiar with the Veneto, but Venice is the major city in that region. But she is a female winemaker, Matilde Paggi. She is on the board for the EU, for the Independent Wine Growers Association. So she carries a pretty big stick in a male-dominated world. And her winery itself is actually, it's built on some wild strawberry fields. So in local dialect, Le Frage is strawberry. So there's a little connection here with those organic wines. Cubes, I'll let you talk about the liqueurs.
Sure.
But the next producer here, Tenuti di Castellaro, the export manager there is our very good friend Daniele Sassi, who is, again, very well connected in the Italian wine world and liked. But he is the export manager for this producer, which is in Lipari, which is one of the 8 Aeolian islands off the coast in the northeast of the island of Sicily. Another organic producer there. So this is actually a red blend. What's the Nero d'Avola and Corinto is the blend there. So
the liquors that are now becoming part of our list, Dominic and I have a great fondness for Italian Amaro. So a few years back, we were talking about it would be really cool if we could bring in an Amaro to add to the portfolio or to add as a separate business, or however it would work out. So we started looking, Dominic on a couple of trips, connected with a few different producers. So after a little while, we started to get some samples sent, and so he met Francesco through a cousin of his who owns a cafe in Calabria. We went back and forth, and we received some samples, started to get some feedback, and we thought, okay, this might actually work. So as time went on, we added a few more of Francesco's products to our list, and now we have 6 different liqueurs and 3 more in the pipeline, which is, as Mike was saying earlier, with the federal and local governments, Dominic has definitely spearheaded this as well. Along with some help from Sean, with all the TTB filings, the label filings, the formulas that we have to have approved. So I give them a lot of credit for that, because they have definitely picked up the ball and run with it. But now it's become from a passion to a real part of the business now. So it's interesting to watch it grow and to see the new products come through the pipeline, and know that you put a lot of work into getting them here.
Sure.
It's taken years.
So you guys have acquired it's pretty massive down here. You have a lot of different liquors and wines. I've been told that wines appreciate over time. So is part of your business model kind of acquiring these wines and holding them? Because they appreciate over time. So it's almost like a good investment when you're making these purchases?
I would say most of the wine that we have is bought to sell.
Okay.
The wine can appreciate with time for sure, but not all wine.
Gotcha.
yeah, we don't like to have anything collect dust here. Truth be told, there's mouths to feed.
Yeah.
No, but I think the bigger, again, a differentiator with Allora, and I kind of grew up professionally in the restaurant hospitality industry, and so I like to think I have a little bit of a pulse what goes on with that. But if I have a superpower, which I'm not wearing a cape today, so but I like to think that I have a niche, and we do this as a team for balance, and also again that finding that price and quality. So I don't know what the exact number is. We'll just say 80 to 85% of the entire portfolio would be available to the local restaurants in a by the glass format. So definitely a mantra for us is that you don't need to spend a ton of money to get a nice glass of wine. Mm-hmm. So yes, we do have, and there's certain things on the other side of this wall. We have what we call the library. which some of those age-worthy wines we'll put every time a new vintage comes in, we put a case away and don't think about it. So that's probably sitting like 40, 50 cases at this point. I mean, it's pretty, it's substantial, but the rest, is here to sell and hopefully sell in a very timely fashion. So
how cool with some of the prospective customers that you get out there to see the restaurants, some of the cocktail lounges, people like that, but they also have chefs. So given the fact that you've got a background where you understand wine and pairings and different things like that, do you ever sit down with the chefs to figure out which pieces could fit really well with a certain dish or a certain piece of what they offer?
Yeah, it's not as much the chef all the time, but we also sometimes will have the chefs come here and the staff come here, where everything's available, for them to taste, and it's the same ongoing conversation that you have in the restaurant, maybe just in a different setting, allows you to work through that or any new ideas they have coming up, seasonal changes.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of a classic theory versus reality sort of thing. That we have the fortunate opportunity, especially with the weather breaking here, to be involved in a lot of wine dinners and farm dinners. More times than not, the pairings occur blindly. It's more of an anomaly. Like when you actually get to sit down and taste the food as you're tasting the wines. Unfortunately, everyone's lives are busy and. That's those are few and far between, but nice opportunities. But it typically doesn't play out that way. To be frank.
Yeah. So you talked a bit about how you kind of pick your winemakers. How do you pick the restaurants that you distribute to or sell to? Is there any sort of like?
We don't discriminate.
Okay.
Yeah. No. I mean, we do have those. We can. It's a luxury, we can work with who we want to work with, both from the producer sense, but also the restaurant sense. I'm pretty bulldogish just about Italian wine, and that it doesn't need to be. Italian wine is food wine, and food wine goes with every type of cuisine. So, yeah, Do we sell mostly to Italian restaurants? Yeah, we do. It's a no-brainer. But I love the challenge of like, let's pair with some authentic Chinese food, or like, how can we pair with sushi or Japanese food? I mean, Italy's a peninsula. There's maybe a little bit of seafood there, Right. I mean, there's a ton of crudos, so it's made to go with Italian wine. So, but it's changing people's mentality. About some of those things, that's a challenge. But yeah, I think we're an open market, so I think Italian wine goes with all types of food, and even we have a lot of success like on some of the entry, even with some of your typical neighborhood bars, that want something for their guests that's good quality but at a good price. So we've had some success in those arenas as well.
Well, I think it's a cool, sexy business that a lot of people would love to get involved with, at some point. But it's something that I don't think you can just dive into. The fact that you guys you've traveled, you've invested in building these relationships, you understand the geography and a lot of the history. That there's so many pieces where you just can't say, "Hey, today I'm going to be a wine person, a wine expert, or a person that actually gets into the degree that you guys have." There's a lot that goes into it. It's not, It
has certainly been a lot. I mean, I remember our first trips over when we went to Vin Italy the first time. An absolutely overwhelming environment, but we had, like we said, we had a few of these close winemakers, and they helped guide us around, and slowly but surely. You build it out and you get to know. You learn a lot. You learn exponentially, especially in the very beginning. Yeah, the business and the people, and
I mean, like after we wrap up here, I mean, we're going to start popping bottles, you know. So,
right.
I mean, that's what we do, you know. That's the romance of it, but it's not the reality of it, you know. It's, you know, just in, you know, everything is so glorified anymore, and especially when it comes to, you know, the sectors of food and wine. There's that, you know, even everyone wants to be a restaurateur, you know. It's, you know, everyone's a chef, everyone's, you know. And if you're pretty successful in your home kitchen, then that translates into a real kitchen, and it's a lot of hard work, and you know it's a lot more romantic than it sounds, but we still have a lot of fun doing it, and you know it's
Absolutely.
still, you know, very well connected to our roots, which is pretty cool.
I couldn't wait to start working with. So I met Dominic in Cubes a few years ago now, and we started just working on editing a label. Mm-hmm. There was the English-Italian conversion. There were a couple of things that we needed to do, and the relationship just kind of blossomed from there. The more I got to know these guys and Michael and listen to their stories and see the table and all this, I'm like, man, this is such a cool and unique business. It's so different, and I think a lot of times you guys might play it down only because you live it every single day. For us on the outside, it's that little, you know, peek behind the curtain. There's this sexiness. There's this coolness about the industry that you serve, and I think the clients that you work with.
Sean, too.
Seriously,
like, let's be honest here. We spew
I'm only
sexiness.
half, so you know I got this half Irish, half Italian thing going on, but I feel like I'm kind of in the club a little. But you know, I think that you guys are doing a great job. I think that we've talked about. I'm going to talk a little bit about, you got a couple products coming up, but also I mentioned at the beginning the Il Bar Italiano, and that was basically, just so our listeners understand this, this was a platform really to help these guys get out there and get in front of people, where it's a repository for not necessarily selling the products, but educating people. And, you know, it's a nice place for them to go to. So if you get a chance, check out ilbaritaliano.com to learn a little bit more about what's going on here. But I think that we talk about new products that are coming up. There are always seasonal things, like with the Melanook. Talk about maybe products that we can expect for 25 that you're working on without revealing too much.
Right.
But I think it's a good time to do that. And then some of the seasonal things, like the Melanook, and just explain what that is. And the Bergamotta, you know, the fruits are different, and it's important to educate people and perk up those ears a little bit.
Sure. So, like Sean said, Il Bar Italiano is a great way for you to gain some knowledge on what we do. Not only does it have information about the products, but also events that we have held, fundraisers. Sean has been great to show up and support us with all of our video and photography and things like that. We have had some winemakers in town for some of these events, so that has been a cool crossover with the liquors.
Might as well name drop with Giampaolo.
Giampaolo Tabarini, you know, we all love him.
When he showed up that night for that event, and Michael was there as well, it was a blast. And the way that Giampaolo just kind of jumps right in
behind the bar and is ready to go, straight from the airport. Didn't even check into his hotel yet.
We had to feed him Negroni first, but
he was ready.
Then he was fueled up.
So, but yeah, so I was saying we have 6 products originally in the lineup. And now, as Sean said, the pipeline is still full for 2025. Dominic and I are in the process of putting purchase orders in for our new products. We now are going to be bringing in a blackberry liqueur, one that is an orange and fennel liqueur, and then also a new one that is kind of interesting in a lot of different ways to people. It's a pistachio cream liqueur.
I love pistachio cakes.
So,
my favorite.
You know, it's a really unique one. I'm interested to see how the bars and cocktail places make drinks with it, because it is so thick. But like Sean said, it takes a while to get these through the pipeline. Sean, we were actually talking this morning about adjustments to labels and things that we're still working on to finalize these, but we're very close now. So it'll be fun to get those out to sell. I think some of these new ones will be great with the change in season, getting into the summer. The orange and fennel, the citronella, it's called, and also the blackberry liqueur, I think is going to be great for the up and coming summer. And then from the ones that we have already, Sean mentioned the bergamotto. Bergamot fruit is not one that everyone knows, but it's a really interesting fruit from southern Italy. Grows in your warmest regions in the Mediterranean. So it's one that people weren't as familiar with, but as they try it, it's really become one of our best sellers. So
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So if you don't mind, let's take a step back and kind of go back to the beginning of your journey with Allora Wine Group. Because what I'm really curious about is you two, if I'm not mistaken, started as essentially employees working for your friend's father, and then you transitioned into being owners of this business. What was that transition like from being an employee to being an owner?
Well, it was different, especially because we ran most of the day to day once we started doing it. So there was definitely transition once that happened. I think the biggest change we made was doing all the importing ourselves and starting to meet all of these people.
Yeah, I mean, it was. So I kind of co-founded things with Guy and his father. So I was involved on that part of the journey, and then just with some state hiccups, it was kind of an all or nothing thing with the state of Pennsylvania, because I was at the time tied to some different liquor licenses in the state. So Cubes was really handling the day-to-day stuff. So I don't think during as far as the transition, it was pretty seamless. Gotcha. And to be, there was, we're very proud to carry the torch from, I think really, but that being said, I think really the only thing that's left over is a cool logo, which that's really stood the test of time is our logo with, which is the bold black A with the kind of set of grapes,
geometric grape.
So it's just this really clean, cool logo that it's kind of it's our brand. Now it's we really encourage some of our friends. Like if you're going to a local restaurant, if you spin that bottle, look at the back, you always see that kind of the A with the set of was that 5 grapes? 6 grapes. On the back. So it really is like almost a stamp. I haven't gone that far, but Cubes actually has it branded on his arm.
No way.
That's awesome.
So I'm a little skittish, but yeah, I mean the business is completely. I think we've turned it around. We've just gone in a different direction. Sure. There's really, other than maybe two producers have also stood the test of time, but other than that, the other 30 plus that we work with have been after the transition. But we really, from even social media wise, I mean it's just 9.5 years later. It's and that front is
and it
totally
continues
different.
to evolve.
Sure. Yeah,
it certainly continues to evolve.
Were these changes made day one? Did you kind of know hey, as soon as we take this over, we're going to make these changes, or was it a gradual change?
It was gradual in a sense, but we knew that we wanted to do the importing, and that we wanted to have those connections, and not buy from another importer and just distribute. So it took a long time.
So when you talk about becoming an importer, in the past, before you guys took this over, you were buying from a different importer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that changed there. Was there more, paperwork or bureaucracy there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And Michael spearheaded all of that.
Gotcha.
So, but
that's why it took so long. So
there was a lot, but we also hit a little bit of a lag time, not a lag time, but in that beginning as we were transitioning out, and you can only meet so many new winemakers at one time, and then the the process of getting their wine here takes time. The turnaround time is long. So there was a time where we were slowly building our new connections and slowly phasing out some of the old connections. So it was definitely a transition of a year and a half that, until we were really back up and running at top speed again.
So you service what, between Pittsburgh and Erie, at least a couple hundred clients, a couple hundred clients.
Probably around 100 or so.
Okay. And then, just looking at the map on the old Bar Italiano website, you can plug in, you can see information about each of these clients, and it's a really nice collaborative effort between the clients you serve and sort of co-branding, cooperating with them on some things. But you've also expanded into the DC metro area. Talk about how exciting that is, and some of the aspects that I think are important there.
Sure. So when Dominic and I were looking for an Amaro to bring in, one thing we wanted to do was try to get a large distribution right to it. So as we looked at some different ones, spoke to a few different distilleries, we were excited to be able to do the Il Calabrese on a nationwide basis. So that was one thing that we discussed with Francesco from the beginning, was growing not just in the state of Pennsylvania, which is our main market, but expanding into other big markets in the United States. So Harbor Imports in the D.C. metro area, so D.C., Maryland, Virginia, we were able to reach out to them. We had a relationship with them, and they were interested, and now that has been a project that Dominic has really spearheaded. He's spent a good amount of time down there helping to build the market, getting out with their staff. Christina is great, and getting out with her to go to their customers, to tell the story more, to explain what we're doing. And as Sean said, the interactive maps, I think, are really, really great. Sean has helped us put that together on the website, where you're able to, just see the pin drop, link you right to a restaurant, and so it's fun to see two maps now, Pennsylvania and the DC map. So hopefully more maps to come as we continue to expand, and but that's how we got into the DC market.
Leading off of that, what are your plans for future growth? What are the next stages of Allora Wine Group?
Well, I mean, more expansion here in Pennsylvania. It's a big state. I think we've got plenty of growth still here in Western Pennsylvania, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I'm good where we are. I have a 6-year-old at home. I have my wife pursuing a PhD right now, so those are very important to me. So yeah, I think we're very fortunate, with the continued growth of the restaurant scene here in Pittsburgh and vicinity is pretty exciting. And I feel like we have a lot more work to do here. Cubes has done, it's kind of a natural expansion, being from a little bit north of the city. It had developed some relationships north of the city, so it was kind of a natural kind of jump to scoot up to Erie, I think I think a lot of people don't necessarily want to go to Erie either. It's by no means Philadelphia, so, but you're obviously not fighting 15 people in Philadelphia for market share. Where Erie, people don't want to go, and we've had some. He's done a fantastic job of developing that market, kind of one client at a time. We do what we do, which is provide great service, great education, great boutique Italian wine, and the word's getting out up there. But for me, like Philly, that'll be someone else's headache. All these listeners out there that have a blank check, you're more than welcome to come down here to the Strip District. I'm happy to take any offers. It's a very romantic business. But there's so much. I mean, we're looking at doing some stuff with the state. Myself and Dominic are looking at some of the different programs, some chairman selection, some premium stuff. But for me, coming back to this table, I want to live. I don't want this business to run. So that's this table in some ways is a reminder of that. Sorry, I had to bring you.
That is
full
super
circle there.
important.
I have a slow tear coming down my
that
left
is so
side too.
awesome.
But
Seriously,
but yeah, you gotta have time to have those conversations around the table. So I don't want this to run my life. So,
you just eloquently rolled in so many important aspects from not only how intelligent and educated you guys are, and I'm not trying to blow your heads up, but you are from the Pittsburgh area. We all have Italian heritage. We all have great work ethics, and we work hard. We hustle every day. And it's funny because you've got this combination of, book smarts, you've got street smarts, you've got great work ethics. Those are all the qualities that, really are rolled into entrepreneurs. You've got to do this. You got to have the drive for it. But the other piece, Michael, that you're talking about is how important family is. We talk about this beautiful table. You talk about your son, and everything like that. And that's what we all work for. I worked in the corporate world for X amount of years. I loved it. Great 20 plus year long paid internship, basically. But at the end of the day, I love my family too, and I want to be around them. And so we're making these choices to position us to do these types of things. And it's a really important aspect of everything that we're involved with here. The story that you guys shared, again, you're playing it down. These guys are a lot cooler than they're playing it to be. The events that we go to, we got little local rock stars here. When they walk in, everybody knows them. They know who they are. They know what they represent. It's more than what these guys are showing right now. But it's a pleasure working together with you. What else can we draw from these guys? I think it would be important for the listeners while we still have them.
I do want to say, I think your little closing remark there is phenomenal. I think that embodies the true essence of an entrepreneur. Is we all get into this not because we like what we're doing, but we want to do something where we can live our lives. We don't want a business to own us. We want to own a business. And I think what you said, embodies that. I think that's really important for listeners to understand is the importance of how, running a business is hard. There's challenges, there's ups and downs, but you have to make of it what you want out of it. Mm-hmm. So before we wrap up this show, we always ask our guests, our entrepreneurs, one question. And that question is, so I'm going to ask it to both of you. If you can give one word of advice to a young entrepreneur or someone who wanted to start a business, what would that be?
Can I use 2 words?
I'm going to
Go
first.
for it.
Just I don't know. It's just how I'm be humble. I think just kind of do the work and just I don't know. I think it's important to be humble.
Absolutely, I agree. To piggyback that, plan on a lot of hard work, be humble, always be upfront, and good things will come as you put that time in.
Yeah. One more thing before we clear up. When we talked about Erie is a really cool little town in that there's a lot of the best of all these different worlds. There's the mom and poppies. There's all the franchises, all these other things. I know Cube's in the work that he's doing there to get plugged into that community. It's super important. I think it's a neat area. Definitely a seasonal area. And I know you guys are working your tails off. And I know we'll be working on a lot of other really amazing things. We've got other events coming up that you'll have to check these guys out on social media for. A lot of them are tied into fundraising and things like that. We've got the possibility of a really cool art and wine event coming up. So, yeah, we'll have more to share for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we thank you, Sean, for helping to facilitate those.
Absolutely. We're glad we could be here. You brought us into basically your home, so to speak, and we certainly appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.